I'm Jed 25, and while most guys my age were living their best lives, I was working two jobs just to keep my head above water. My younger brother Maxwell never worked a day in his life. Our parents made sure his path was paved with gold while I walked on broken glass. Everything changed the night I delivered pizza to a familiar address. Before I get into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more real-life stories. Growing up in Oakwood, a middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, my childhood home looked normal from the outside. White picket fence, neatly trimmed lawn, and a family of four that seemed picture-perfect to neighbors and friends. My father Robert worked as a regional sales manager for a furniture company, and my mother Linda was an elementary school teacher. On paper, we were the quintessential American family. But behind closed doors, our family dynamic told a different story. From my earliest memories, it was clear that Maxwell, my brother, 3 years younger than me, was the golden child. When Christmas rolled around, Maxwell would unwrap the latest gaming console or expensive sports equipment, while I received practical items like socks or school supplies. My parents didn't even bother to hide their favoritism. Maxwell needs more encouragement, my mother would say, whenever I questioned the disparity. You're naturally gifted, Jed. You don't need as much support as your brother does. This explanation never sat well with me. If anything, it felt like a punishment for being self-sufficient. Throughout elementary school, I maintained straight A's, joined the science club, and even won the regional spelling bee in 5th grade. My academic achievements were met with casual acknowledgement, a quick good job before the conversation shifted to Maxwell's struggles with basic subjects. Your brother needs extra tutoring this semester, my father announced one evening when I was 12. We'll need to cut back on your after-school activities to save money. That was the year I had to quit the robotics team that I loved. Meanwhile, Maxwell continued his expensive soccer training, despite showing little interest or aptitude for the sport. My grandmother Rose was the only family member who treated us equally. During summer visits to her small house in rural Illinois, she would spend time with each of us individually, teaching me to build model airplanes, while later helping Maxwell with his reading. You're both special in your own ways. She would tell me when we had private moments. Never let anyone make you feel less than. It was during one of these summer visits that I first noticed the absence of my Uncle Stephen at family gatherings. When I asked Grandma Rose about him, her expression darkened momentarily. Your father and his brother had a disagreement many years ago, she explained carefully, choosing her words. Sometimes grown-ups have trouble seeing eye to eye. I didn't learn the full story until much later, but even then I sensed there was more beneath the surface. Uncle Stephen became a mysterious figure in my mind, someone who had somehow escaped the family orbit. As I entered high school, I doubled down on achievement, convinced that if I just accomplished enough, my parents would finally see me as worthy of the same attention they lavished on Maxwell. I joined the debate team, ran track, maintained a perfect GPA, and even started a tutoring service for younger students. My guidance counselor called me one of the most promising students she'd ever encountered. My dream of becoming an architect took root during my sophomore year when our class visited a newly constructed community center downtown. The architect gave us a tour explaining how every element served both function and beauty. I was captivated by the idea of creating spaces that could shape human experience. That night I announced my career ambition at dinner. Architecture, my father scoffed. That's an expensive education for a career with unstable prospects. Why not something practical, like accounting? My mother suggested passing the potatoes to Maxwell, who was busy texting under the table. The following week, Maxwell mentioned an interest in becoming a DJ. My parents immediately purchased professional equipment that gathered dust in his room after just 2 months of half-hearted practice. Despite their discouragement, I continued pursuing my passion. I took extra art classes, studied mathematics with intensity, and spent weekends sketching building designs. By senior year, I had compiled an impressive portfolio and secured glowing recommendations from teachers. When college acceptance letters arrived, I was admitted to several prestigious architecture programs, including one at Northwestern University that offered a partial scholarship. I was ecstatic, but my celebration was short-lived. We've been saving for Maxwell's education, my father explained during a tense family meeting. With his learning challenges, he'll need extra support. You're smart, Jed. You'll figure it out. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the reality of my situation becoming crystal clear. In my family's eyes, my competence wasn't something to nurture, it was an excuse to withhold support. Northwestern's architecture program was everything I had dreamed of, but the partial scholarship covered less than half of the tuition. When I approached my parents about contributing to the remainder, they were unmoved. "We just don't have extra funds right now," my mother explained over the phone, though I could hear Maxwell's new gaming setup blaring in the background. "You should apply for student loans and look into work-study programs. This is part of becoming an adult, Jed." I swallowed my bitterness and did exactly that, filling out loan applications and securing a position at the campus library that paid just above minimum wage. My first semester was a brutal adjustment period, balancing intensive studio classes with 20 hours of work weekly left little time for sleep, let alone a social life. Meanwhile, Maxwell enrolled at a state college just 30 minutes from our parents' house. Despite his mediocre grades, they covered his full tuition, apartment, and living expenses. "Your brother isn't as independent as you," my father explained during a rare call. "He needs a safety net." By sophomore year, tuition increased by 5% and my rent went up. The library job wasn't enough anymore. I started scanning job boards daily, eventually landing a second job delivering pizzas for Romano's, a local Italian restaurant. My new schedule became a punishing cycle: classes from 8 to 3, library work from 4 to 8, pizza deliveries from 9 to 1 in the morning, then a few precious hours of sleep before starting again. My apartment was a rundown 2-bedroom unit shared with 3 other working students in a neighborhood that made my mother clutch her pearls the one time she visited. Julian was a nursing student who worked hospital night shifts. Trevor was a computer science major who repaired computers on the side, and Darius studied business while bartending weekends. We were all hustling, sharing a cramped space with furniture salvaged from curbs and thrift stores. "Man, you're running yourself into the ground," Darius commented one rare evening when we were all home, noticing how I nearly fell asleep over my plate of instant ramen. "No choice," I replied, forcing myself to finish the food before heading out for my delivery shift. These buildings aren't going to design themselves. The physical toll was significant. I developed dark circles under my eyes that never seemed to fade. My once athletic frame became leaner, sometimes bordering on gaunt during particularly stressful periods. I caught every cold that circulated on campus, my immune system weakened by exhaustion. Despite these challenges, I maintained a 3.8 GPA. Architecture studios demanded perfection: models had to be precisely constructed, drawings meticulously detailed. I often worked on projects in the bathroom with the door closed, the only private space available when my roommates needed sleep and I had deadlines looming. Holiday visits home became increasingly uncomfortable. I couldn't afford to bring impressive gifts while Maxwell showered our parents with purchases made using the credit card they funded. Conversations revolved around his social life and campus adventures, with only cursory questions about my studies that quickly gave way to complaints about rising property taxes or requests for me to fix something around the house during my studies. Vacation. The rare phone calls from my parents inevitably included some form of request. "While you're at it, could you research senior care options for Grandma Rose?" or "Maxwell needs help with his term paper on urban development. That's your area, right?" Never mind that. I barely had time to complete my own assignments. Social media became a source of both connection and pain. Scrolling through Instagram between deliveries, I'd see Maxwell's posts from spring break in Cancun, the new car our parents bought him for his 20th birthday, or the expensive concert tickets that were no big deal. Each image was a reminder of the disparity in our lives. During my junior year, a pipe burst in our apartment, damaging my laptop where I stored critical project files. When I called home in desperation, explaining that I needed $2,000 for a replacement capable of running architectural software, my father suggested I be more careful with my belongings. That same month, they bought Maxwell a new motorcycle after he grew bored with the car. "You don't understand what it's like," I vented to my roommate Trevor one night after a particularly defeating call home. "It's not about the money. It's like they've decided I don't deserve the same consideration as my brother." "Family can be toxic, man," Trevor replied, sliding me a beer from our shared fridge. "Sometimes the people who should support you the most are the ones who hold you back." By senior year, I was running on fumes. The combination of academic pressure, financial stress, and emotional exhaustion had me questioning whether I could make it to graduation. My design professors praised my work but expressed concern about my health. "Your concepts are brilliant." Jed, my studio instructor, commented, "But you look like you haven't slept in months." She wasn't wrong. Between rising rent, textbook costs, and a minor car repair that depleted my emergency fund, I had taken on extra delivery shifts. Some nights I delivered pizzas until 3 in the morning, crashed for a few hours, then dragged myself to an 8 a.m. lecture. Coffee became a food group, and proper meals were a luxury I rarely afforded myself. It was during one of these late-night delivery shifts that fate intervened in the most unexpected way. April showers bring May flowers, but in Chicago, they mostly bring misery to pizza delivery drivers. It was a Friday night in the middle of a particularly vicious downpour. My 10-year-old Honda Civic was making an ominous clicking sound that I was studiously ignoring, hoping it wouldn't become a costly repair. The delivery app on my phone pinged with a new order: a large pepperoni and mushroom pizza and garlic knots, to an address in Highland Park, one of the wealthiest suburbs north of the city. The day had already been a disaster. I had overslept after my late shift the previous night, missing the first 15 minutes of an important lecture. Then my studio professor had critiqued my latest project in front of the entire class, pointing out flaws in my structural design that would require a substantial revision. Between classes, I had received an email from the financial aid office informing me that one of my loans for the next semester was being reduced due to federal funding cuts. The Highland Park delivery was the cherry on top of this miserable Sunday. Wealthy neighborhoods were notorious for poor tips, despite the long drives required to reach them. As I navigated the rain-slicked roads, windshield wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour, I calculated how many more hours I would need to work to make up for the loan reduction. I finally arrived at a sprawling Tudor-style home, set back from the road, partially hidden by mature oak trees. The property screamed old money, from the perfectly maintained landscaping to the luxury vehicles in the circular driveway. Balancing the pizza box and side order under my flimsy rain jacket, I dashed to the front door, already anticipating the minimal tip I would likely receive. When the door opened, I initially didn't look up, focused on keeping the food dry as I recited my standard delivery greeting. "Good evening, I have a delivery from Romano's Pot/. Your total is $24.95. Jed, is that you?" The familiar voice made me snap my head up in surprise. Standing in the doorway was a man in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and familiar eyes. Eyes that matched my father's, and in some ways my own. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. Uncle Stephen. We stared at each other in mutual shock. I hadn't seen him since I was a child, but there was no mistaking the family resemblance. He had aged well-distinguished lines, framing eyes that widened as they took in my soaked uniform and exhausted appearance. "My God, what are you doing? Delivering pizzas? Come inside, for heaven's sake. You're drenched." Too stunned to refuse, I stepped into a grand foyer with marble flooring and a crystal chandelier overhead. Uncle Stephen took the pizza and placed it on a console table, then turned to examine me more closely. His expression shifted from surprise to concern. "You look like you haven't slept in days. What's going on? Last I heard you were at Northwestern." The simple question, asked with genuine concern, broke something loose inside me. Standing in my soggy uniform in the entrance of this magnificent house, I found myself explaining my situation, the partial scholarship, my parents' refusal to help, the 2 jobs I juggled while maintaining my coursework. "And your brother Maxwell? How is he doing?" Uncle Stephen asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Great," I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Full ride from Mom and Dad. New car. Nice apartment. The usual." Uncle Stephen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Some things never change, I see." He invited me further inside, insisting I join him in the kitchen for a proper meal while my uniform dried. I called my manager at Romano's, making up an excuse about car trouble. As I sat at the immaculate island counter, watching my uncle efficiently reheat some homemade stew, I finally asked the question that had lingered for years. "What happened between you and Dad? Why did you disappear from family gatherings?" Stephen stirred the stew thoughtfully before answering. Your father and I had a fundamental disagreement about business ethics. We started a company together after college, a commercial real estate development firm. I discovered Robert was cutting corners on building materials and safety measures to increase profits. When I confronted him, things got ugly. I refused to be part of it and sold my share of the business to him. He placed a bowl of hearty stew in front of me, along with a chunk of fresh bread. "Eat," he commanded before continuing. "Your father spread rumors in the family that I had tried to cheat him. Your grandmother knew the truth, but most others believed him. It was easier to distance myself than fight a battle I couldn't win." As I ate my first proper meal in days, Uncle Stephen asked about my architectural studies. Unlike my parents' perfunctory inquiries, his questions were specific and thoughtful. I found myself describing my design philosophy, my struggles with certain technical aspects, and my dreams for the future. "You know, I rebuilt this entire house after I bought it," he mentioned casually. "Worked with an architectural firm in the city. In fact, my company now owns several buildings in the Chicago area and beyond. We have our own in-house architectural team." He paused, studying me for a moment. "How would you feel about an internship? Paid, of course, and with flexible hours that work around your class schedule. No nepotism, you'd have to prove yourself like anyone else. But it would be better than delivering pizzas in the rain, and relevant to your field." The offer stunned me. "Why would you help me? You barely know me." Uncle Stephen's expression softened. "Because I see myself in you, Jed. Determined, hardworking, unwilling to compromise your principles. And because families should support each other's growth, not just the ones they've chosen as favorites." His words hit hard, articulating exactly what I had felt my entire life, but had never heard, acknowledged out loud. For the first time in years, I felt seen. "I'll need to think about it," I said, not wanting to appear desperate, despite the lifeline he was offering. "Take your time," he replied, though his knowing smile suggested he already understood my answer. "Just know that the offer stands. Sometimes the universe has interesting ways of reconnecting people who should never have been separated." As I prepared to leave my uniform now dry, Uncle Stephen handed me an envelope. "Your tip," he said with a wink. Inside was $500 in cash, more than I made in a week of deliveries. "I can't accept this," I protested. "Consider it back payment for all the birthdays and Christmases I missed," he replied firmly. "Family takes care of family, Jed. At least that's how it should be." Driving back to my apartment that night, the rain had stopped and stars were peeking through breaks in the clouds. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar, stirring in my chest hope. For 3 days I wrestled with Uncle Stephen's offer. The internship would be a golden opportunity, real-world experience in my field, better pay and hours that wouldn't destroy my health. Yet something held me back. Was I betraying my father by accepting help from his estranged brother? Would this make the family rift even worse? Most troubling was the voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother. "You don't deserve this opportunity." My roommate Darius set me straight one evening when I voiced these concerns. "Let me get this straight," he said, pausing his video game. "You're worried about loyalty to parents who have shown you none. And you think you don't deserve a break after working yourself half to death for years? Man, that's some serious brainwashing they've done on you." His blunt assessment cut through my hesitation. The next morning I called the number on the business card Uncle Stephen had given me and accepted the internship offer. "Excellent," he responded, sounding genuinely pleased. "Come by the office Monday afternoon. Wear something professional. First impressions matter." I gave notice at Romano's that same day, explaining that I'd found a position related to my field of study. My manager seemed genuinely happy for me, patting my shoulder as he said, "About time someone recognized your worth, kid." I kept my position at the campus library partly for the additional income, but mostly because I found the quiet, book-filled environment calming amid life's chaos. Having one job instead of two felt like a luxury, allowing me to catch up on sleep and actually review my notes between classes. The following Monday, I stood outside, a gleaming high-rise in downtown Chicago, my second-hand suit, freshly pressed, and my portfolio tucked under my arm. Stephen Barrett Architectural and Development occupied the top 3 floors, the company name displayed in elegant lettering across glass doors. The receptionist, informed of my arrival, ushered me into a conference room where Uncle Stephen waited along with a woman in her 40s with a sharp bob and sharper eyes. "Jed, welcome." Uncle Stephen greeted me, formally maintaining a professional distance. "This is Sandra Williams, our lead architectural designer, and the person you'll be reporting to." Sandra's handshake was firm. "Stephen speaks highly of your potential, but I'll be the judge of that. I don't care if you're the owner's nephew in this office. You earn your place through talent and hard work." Her directness was refreshing after years of navigating my parents' veiled criticisms. "I wouldn't want it any other way," I responded. That first day was a whirlwind of introductions, paperwork, and orientation. I met the team of architects, designers, and project managers who would become my colleagues. The office culture was intense, but supportive, with everyone clearly passionate about their work. By day's end, my head was spinning with new information, but in the best possible way. "How was it?" Uncle Stephen asked when he stopped by my tiny assigned desk at closing time. "Overwhelming," I admitted. "But amazing." The Marshall Street project Sandra showed me the sustainable community center that's exactly the kind of work I want to do someday. He smiled, seemingly satisfied with my response. "Good. Now how about dinner? Not as boss and intern, but as uncle and nephew who have some catching up to do." Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. During office hours, Uncle Stephen was Mr. Barrett, the respected founder, who treated me no differently than any other intern. But twice a week, we would have dinner together at his home, gradually rebuilding our family connection. During these dinners, I learned the full story of the brothers' estrangement. The construction company they had founded together had been moderately successful until my father began cutting corners. The final straw, Uncle Stephen explained one evening, was when Robert knowingly used substandard materials in a school building to increase profit margins. I couldn't be part of something that put children at risk. After selling his share to my father, Stephen had started over building his company on principles of sustainability and ethical business practices. The bet had paid off. His firm was now one of the most respected in the Midwest, known for innovative designs that prioritized both environmental responsibility and community needs. "Your father chose a different path," he said, without malice. He valued immediate gains over lasting impact. His company struggled after several projects developed structural issues. Last I heard, he moved into furniture sales. This revelation added context to my childhood memories. My father's business failures might explain his bitterness, though not his favoritism toward Maxwell. At work, I threw myself into every task assigned, no matter how menial. I organized the materials library, created digital archives of old blueprints, and made coffee runs without complaint. But I also absorbed everything around me, studying designs in progress and listening to design discussions among the senior architects. Sandra, initially skeptical of the boss's nephew, gradually warmed to me as she recognized my dedication. 1 month into the internship, she dropped a set of preliminary sketches on my desk. "What do you think of these layouts for the Richardson project? Be honest." I studied the community center plans carefully before offering my observations. The flow between the multi-purpose room and outdoor space is awkward. If you flip the orientation and added sliding glass doors along this wall instead, you'd create a more flexible space that could expand for larger events. She considered my suggestion with narrowed eyes. "Not bad, Barrett Jr. Draw it up and have it on my desk tomorrow morning." I stayed late that night, creating detailed renderings of my proposed modification. The next day, Sandra examined my work in silence before finally nodding. "We're presenting concepts to the client next week. Your version will be included." To my astonishment, the client selected my design concept, with Sandra graciously acknowledging my contribution during the meeting. After that, I was assigned increasingly substantive tasks, gradually becoming a valued junior member of the design team. As my professional life improved, so did my living situation. With steady income from the internship, I moved from the overcrowded apartment to a small but clean studio closer to campus. For the first time in years, I had a space of my own, a luxury I hadn't realized I'd been missing until I experienced it. Throughout this transformation, I maintained zero contact with my parents, and they made no effort to reach me either. Through social media, I glimpsed Maxwell's continuing college adventure parties, spring break trips, and a new gaming setup that probably cost more than my monthly rent. These posts no longer triggered the same bitterness. Instead, I felt a growing detachment as if observing the life of a distant acquaintance rather than my brother. "Have you thought about reaching out to them?" Uncle Stephen asked during one of our dinners 3 months into my internship. "Not really," I admitted. "They haven't tried to contact me either. I'm not sure what I would say if they did." He nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the healthiest thing is distance. Just know that whatever happens with them, you have family in your corner now." That simple assurance meant more than he could possibly know. By my 3rd month at Stephen Barrett Architectural and Development, I had settled into a rhythm that felt both challenging and sustainable. My typical day started with classes in the morning, followed by afternoon and evening hours at the firm. Unlike my previous jobs, the work energized rather than depleted me. I was learning more practical aspects of architecture in the office than in many of my theoretical courses. Sandra, who had initially kept me at arm's length, became a demanding but invaluable mentor. "Your technical skills are solid," she observed during one of our weekly check-ins, "but your presentation needs work. Clients don't just buy designs, they buy confidence in the designer." She began including me in client meetings first as an observer, then gradually allowing me to present portions of projects. Each time she provided brutally honest feedback that helped me refine my professional persona. Less apologetic language, she would say. "Stand straighter, make eye contact, own your ideas." 4 months into my internship came an unexpected opportunity. The firm had been invited to participate in a competition to design an eco-friendly community center in a revitalizing neighborhood. Uncle Stephen announced that he wanted to submit multiple concepts from different team members, including junior staff. "This is a chance for fresh perspectives," he explained during the all-hands meeting. "The neighborhood has a young demographic. We need ideas that will resonate with the community's actual users." Working on my submission consumed every spare moment for 2 weeks. I researched the neighborhood's history, demographics, and needs. I interviewed residents, spending weekends walking the streets and talking to local business owners. My design incorporated elements of the area's industrial past while creating flexible multi-use spaces that could adapt to the community's evolving needs. The night before submissions were due, I remained at the office until nearly midnight, perfecting my renderings and rehearsing my presentation. When I finally emerged from the building, I was surprised to find Uncle Stephen waiting in the lobby. "I thought you might need dinner," he said, holding up a bag from my favorite sandwich shop. As we ate in his office overlooking the Chicago skyline, he carefully avoided discussing my project. "Competition rules," he explained. "I'll be judging blindly, along with the rest of the senior team." Instead, we talked about my upcoming final exams and his plans to expand the firm to the West Coast. The day of internal presentations arrived. Junior architects and designers presented their concepts one by one, each allotted 15 minutes, followed by questions. When my turn came, nervous energy propelled me through a concise explanation of my vision for a community hub that seamlessly blended indoor and outdoor spaces with sustainable features that would reduce operating costs while serving as educational tools for visitors. The senior team's faces remained impassive throughout my presentation, but Sandra's slight nod when I concluded gave me hope. 3 agonizing days later, Uncle Stephen called an all-staff meeting to announce the selected design. After careful consideration, the concept we'll be submitting comes from our newest team member. He announced his professional tone, betraying no hint of our personal connection. "Jed has created a design that perfectly balances innovation with practicality, while demonstrating deep understanding of the community's needs." The room erupted in applause, with Sandra giving me a rare smile. "Told you the kid had potential," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, cementing my acceptance among the team. That evening, Uncle Stephen left a note on my desk. No verbal congratulations that might suggest favoritism, just a simple card reading, "Well earned. This is just the beginning." The following week brought another surprise: a promotion to junior associate with a substantial salary increase. Sandra delivered the news with her characteristic bluntness. "Don't let it go to your head. We expect even more from you now." With my improved financial situation, I moved again, this time to a comfortable 1-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood. For the first time since starting college, I purchased new furniture instead of secondhand pieces. My tiny balcony became a sanctuary, where I could sketch and read developing designs just for the joy of creation, rather than only for assignments or work. My social life expanded beyond work and school. I began attending architectural lectures and gallery openings, networking with professionals in the field. At one such event, I met Taylor, a landscape architect whose firm often collaborated with Uncle Stephen's company. Our shared passion for sustainable design led to coffee meetings that evolved into dinner dates. For the first time in years, I had space in my life for a relationship. "You seem different lately," Taylor observed over dinner one evening. "More relaxed, more confident." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally building something worthwhile, not just struggling to stay afloat." As my external circumstances improved, I also began addressing my internal landscape. At Uncle Stephen's suggestion, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Patricia helped me recognize patterns from my childhood that still affected my self-worth and decision-making. "You've internalized the message that you don't deserve support," she noted during one session. "Every time something good happens, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop." Through weekly sessions, I began dismantling these beliefs, gradually accepting that I deserve success and happiness just as much as anyone else, including Maxwell. The most liberating realization was that my parents' favoritism reflected their limitations, not my worth. "Some parents replay their own childhood wounds through their children," Dr. Patricia explained. "Your father may see himself in Maxwell, the child who struggles, and your mother enables this pattern. But their perceptions aren't reality." 6 months into my new life, I had established routines that nurtured rather than depleted me. Morning runs along the lakefront. Nutritious meals instead of whatever was cheapest. 8 hours of sleep most nights. Regular social outings with colleagues who became friends. Weekend visits to museums and architectural landmarks that had once seemed inaccessible luxuries. My final semester of college coincided with increasing responsibilities at the firm. The community center project my design had won was moving forward with me serving on the core team under Sandra's supervision. Seeing my concepts take shape in detailed construction documents gave me a satisfaction unlike anything I'd experienced before. "You should be proud," Sandra told me, after a particularly successful client meeting where my presentation had received enthusiastic approval. Not many designers see their concepts realize this early in their careers. I was bringing this news home to share with Taylor during our dinner date when my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months, my mother's. The sight of my mother's name on my phone screen sent a jolt through my system. For a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Jed, thank goodness you answered. We've been trying to reach you." My mother's voice had that particular breathless quality it acquired whenever family drama was unfolding. "What's going on?" I asked already, feeling tension creeping into my shoulders. "It's complicated. Your father's business is struggling, has been for months. We've been trying to manage, but things have gotten difficult." She paused, her voice dropping. "We need to talk to you in person. Can you come to dinner this Sunday?" The old me would have immediately rearranged my schedule to accommodate their request. The new me had boundaries. "I'll need to check my calendar. What exactly is this about?" Her sigh carried thinly veiled irritation at my lack of immediate compliance. "Your father would prefer to discuss it in person. Please, Jed. It's important." After confirming the time and ending the call, I sat staring at my phone, a whirlpool of emotions churning inside me. Taylor, who had witnessed my side of the conversation, touched my arm gently. "Family stuff?" she asked. "After months of silence, they suddenly need to see me," I explained. "Apparently my father's business is in trouble." "Are you going to go?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes, but not alone. Would you come with me? I could use the support." Taylor squeezed my hand. "Of course. But maybe you should talk to your uncle first." That evening I called Uncle Stephen and explained the situation. His long pause spoke volumes. "Be careful, Jed," he finally said. "Robert wouldn't reach out unless he needs something significant. I don't want to see you hurt again." "I know, but I need to at least hear what they have to say." "Then listen more than you speak. And remember, you don't owe them anything." Sunday arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Taylor and I pulled up to my childhood home, the place looking shabbier than I remembered. The lawn needed mowing, and the shutters that my father had always kept meticulously painted showed signs of peeling. My mother opened the door, surprise flashing across her face at the sight of Taylor, before she composed herself. "You must be Jed's friend," she said, with a tight smile. "I'm Linda, his mother." "Taylor's my girlfriend," I corrected, watching my mother process this information about my life she knew nothing about. The interior of the house revealed more signs of financial strain. The furniture looked worn, and the fresh flowers my mother had always insisted upon were noticeably absent. My father entered from his study, looking older than his 56 years. "Son," he greeted me with an awkward half-hug. "Good to see you." Maxwell emerged last slouched and sullen, glancing up briefly from his phone to nod in my direction. Dinner was a strange affair. My mother had prepared all my childhood favorites, an obvious attempt to soften whatever was coming. The conversation remained superficial questions about my classes, but not my job comments about the weather, neighborhood gossip about people I barely remembered. Finally, as my mother served coffee and store-bought pie, my father cleared his throat. "Jed, we asked you here because we're facing a difficult situation. The business has been struggling since the recession. We've been getting by. But recently, things have taken a turn." "What kind of turn?" I asked. "We had to take out a second mortgage on the house last year," my mother interjected. "The payments are becoming unmanageable with the business bringing in less income." My father nodded grimly. "We're at risk of foreclosure if things don't improve quickly." "That's tough," I said, genuinely sorry for their situation, but still waiting for the other shoe to drop. "What does this have to do with me?" They exchanged glances before my father continued. "We understand you're working for Stephen's firm now, in a good position." So that was it. They knew about my connection to Uncle Stephen and my improved circumstances. I wondered how they had found out, perhaps through mutual acquaintances or social media. "I have an internship there." "Yes." "Well," my mother said, with forced brightness, "we thought perhaps you could help us with a loan to get through this rough patch. Just until your father's business recovers. Or maybe your uncle would consider helping family," my father added, unable to hide the bitterness in his voice when mentioning his brother. Before I could respond, Maxwell, who had been silent throughout dinner, interjected. "There's something else." He looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. "I kind of wrecked my car last month. It was totaled." "What happened?" Taylor asked, speaking for the first time since introductions. My mother jumped in quickly. "Just an unfortunate accident. These things happen with young drivers." "I was coming home from a party," Maxwell admitted. "Had a few drinks. Hit a guardrail." "You were driving drunk," I clarified, stunned by his casualness. "The insurance won't cover it because of the DUI," my father explained. "We need to get him a reliable vehicle for his internship this summer." I sat back, processing the multiple requests hidden within this family dinner. They needed money for the mortgage. They wanted to buy Maxwell a new car, despite his irresponsible behavior. And they expected me, or by extension, Uncle Stephen, to provide it. "Let me understand," I said slowly. "You haven't contacted me in months. You never helped with my education or living expenses. But now that you need money suddenly, I'm family again." "That's not fair, Jed," my mother protested. "We've always been family." "Really? When I was working 2 jobs and barely sleeping, when I needed help with tuition, or when my laptop was damaged, where was this family spirit?" "We didn't have resources then either," my father argued. "Yet somehow, you managed to buy Maxwell a car and a motorcycle," I countered. "You funded his apartment and his spring break trips." "Don't tell me there weren't resources. There were just none for me." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Taylor squeezed my knee under the table, a gesture of support, as I finally voiced years of pent-up frustration. "I'm sorry about your financial troubles," I continued more calmly. "Truly. But I'm not in a position to just hand over money without any plan for how it will be repaid, or what changes you'll make to prevent ending up in the same situation again." "What are you suggesting?" my father asked stiffly. "If you want my help, it comes with conditions. First, you need financial counseling. I can connect you with someone who specializes in small business owners in financial distress. Second, Maxwell needs to take responsibility for his actions, get a job, contribute to household expenses, and save for his own car." "A job?" Maxwell looked appalled at the suggestion. "I'm focusing on school right now. I managed to work while maintaining a higher GPA than you've ever had, I reminded him. It's entirely possible. My mother's lips thinned into a displeased line. We're not asking for financial control, Jed. We're asking for help from a son who's in a position to give it. And I'm offering help, just not a blank check. There's a difference between supporting someone and enabling destructive patterns. My father pushed back from the table, face flushed with anger. So you think you can dictate terms to us now, because you're working for my brother, getting ideas above your station. Robert, my mother cautioned, but he was too far gone. You've always thought you were better than us, haven't you? With your fancy university and architecture dreams? Now you've got Stephen filling your head with nonsense about your potential. You're nothing special, Jed. Just ungrateful. The words were designed to wound, to put me back in my place, as the child who should comply with parental demands regardless of their reasonableness. In the past, they might have succeeded. Now they simply confirmed what I already knew. I think we're done here, I said, standing up. Taylor rose beside me, her presence steadying. Jed, please, my mother pleaded. Your father doesn't mean that. We're just stressed about the situation. I understand stress. I lived with it for years, while working multiple jobs to put myself through school. What I don't understand is why you think it's my responsibility to rescue you from problems of your own making. So that's it. You're turning your back on family. My father's voice dripped with accusation. Number, I'm offering real help, not enabling. My offer stands financial counseling and support with a plan for change. Ball's in your court. As Taylor and I walked to the door, Maxwell followed us, looking uncharacteristically thoughtful. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I get why you're angry. I probably would be too. It was the closest thing to self-awareness I'd ever heard from my brother. It's not about anger, Max. It's about breaking unhealthy patterns. Think about it. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the confrontation. Finally, Taylor broke the silence. You handled that really well. Set boundaries without burning bridges completely. I don't know if bridges remain, I admitted, but at least I was true to myself. The next morning I half expected an apologetic call from my mother, but none came. 3 days passed in silence before my phone lit up with her number again. Jed, her voice was tight but controlled. We've discussed your proposal. Your father isn't happy about the conditions, but we're in a position where we need to consider all options. Tell us more about this financial counselor. The following months brought gradual but significant changes to my family dynamic. True to my word, I connected my parents with financial advisor Marcus Henderson, who specialized in helping families recover from economic hardship. I covered his fees as part of my support, but made it clear that this was an investment in their future self-sufficiency, not an ongoing subsidy. Your son has given you a valuable opportunity, Marcus told my parents during our initial joint session. Many families in your situation end up losing everything because they can't access this kind of professional guidance. My father sat stiffly throughout that first meeting, pride visibly wounded. My mother, however, took copious notes and asked thoughtful questions. As weeks passed, Marcus helped them create a realistic budget, negotiate with creditors, and develop a plan to stabilize the furniture business. Your mother's really engaging with the process, Marcus shared during one of our check-in calls. She's taken charge of the bookkeeping and identified several areas where they can reduce expenses. Maxwell's journey proved more challenging. After several fruitless weeks of half-hearted job searching, he finally secured a position at a local hardware store thanks to one of my father's longtime customers. His initial complaints about menial labor gradually gave way to a surprising development. He was good with customers, particularly older homeowners, seeking advice on their projects. He's always had people skills, my mother acknowledged during one of our now regular phone conversations. He just needed to find the right application for them. The most significant change came when Maxwell enrolled in a substance abuse program following a heart-to-heart conversation with my father, who had finally recognized the seriousness of the drunk driving incident. This step, more than any other, signaled a potential turning point in my brother's maturation. My own professional life continued its upward trajectory. The community center project moved from design development to construction, with my role expanding accordingly. I visited the construction site weekly, collaborating with contractors to ensure the building took shape according to our vision. You have a natural ability to translate design intent into practical direction, Sandra observed, after watching me work through a complicated detail with the framing contractor. Not all designers can bridge that gap effectively. 3 weeks before my college graduation, Uncle Stephen called me into his office for an unexpected meeting. Sandra was already seated at the conference table, along with the firm's operations director. "Jed," my uncle began formally, "we've been impressed with your contributions to the firm. With your graduation approaching, we'd like to offer you a full-time position as an associate designer." The job offer included a salary that exceeded my expectations, along with benefits and support for my architectural licensing exams. I accepted immediately, a wave of validation washing over me. This wasn't charity or nepotism. I had proven my worth through consistent quality work. My graduation ceremony became a watershed moment in our family's healing process. To my surprise, my parents and Maxwell attended, sitting somewhat awkwardly beside Uncle Stephen and Taylor in the audience. Afterward, we shared a civil lunch where my academic accomplishments were acknowledged without the usual comparisons or qualifications. "We're proud of you, son," my father said, as we parted the words simple, but previously unspoken. "You've worked hard for this." Over the summer, the community center project neared completion. Walking through the nearly finished building for the first time was surreal, seeing spaces that had once existed only in my imagination now rendered in concrete, glass, and steel. The light quality in the main gathering area was exactly as I had envisioned it, filtering through carefully positioned skylights to create pools of natural illumination. "This is your vision brought to life," Uncle Stephen said, standing beside me as we surveyed the space. "The first of many." The center's opening ceremony in September became a milestone in my career. Community members, city officials, and the design team gathered to celebrate the completion of a building that would serve as a neighborhood hub for generations. When the client acknowledged my contribution, calling me to the podium to share in the recognition, I spotted my parents in the audience, genuine pride on their faces. Our family relationship remained a work in progress. Financial advisor Marcus continued working with my parents, whose situation had stabilized, though not yet fully recovered. Maxwell maintained his job at the hardware store while taking business classes at the local community college, showing previously unseen discipline. Uncle Stephen and my father reached a fragile truce facilitated partly by my mother's peacekeeping efforts. They weren't close, but the bitter estrangement had evolved into a civil coexistence. "Your brother made poor choices," Uncle Stephen reflected during one of our regular dinners, now a cherished tradition. "But perhaps we all deserve second chances when we're truly trying to change." As my first year as a full-time architect drew to a close, I found myself mentoring a new intern, a young woman named Alicia, who reminded me of myself, talented, hardworking, and struggling financially to pursue her passion. "I don't know if I can make it through next semester," she confided one evening, as we worked late on a deadline. "My second job isn't covering expenses anymore, and my family can't help." Instead of offering empty encouragement, I arranged for her to receive the firm's newly established education stipend, created at my suggestion to support promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds. "Someone took a chance on me when I was struggling," I explained when she protested that she hadn't earned such support. "Now it's my turn to pass that forward. All I ask is that someday when you're in a position to help someone else, you remember this moment." Looking back on my journey from struggling student to successful professional, I realized that the hardships, while painful, had forged resilience and perspective that many of my peers lacked. I understood the value of work, the importance of integrity, and the power of perseverance in ways that couldn't be taught in a classroom. The most profound lesson, however, was about writing my own story. For years, I had allowed my parents' perception to define my sense of self-worth. The transformation began, not when Uncle Stephen offered me an opportunity, but when I chose to accept it, when I decided I deserved better than what I had been given. The greatest freedom I shared during a career day presentation at my former university is recognizing that while we can't control how others treat us, we absolutely control how we respond. Success isn't about proving your worth to those who failed to see it. It's about building a life that reflects your own values and potential. My relationship with Taylor deepened throughout this period of growth and change. Her steady support and clear-eyed perspective helped me navigate family complexities while pursuing professional goals. When I proposed on the rooftop garden of the community center, I had helped design her joyful acceptance felt like another piece of my life falling perfectly into place. Life continues to present challenges and opportunities. My parents' situation improves gradually, with occasional setbacks that they now handle more responsibly. Maxwell recently earned a promotion at the hardware store and is talking about community college courses in business management. Uncle Stephen and I collaborate on increasingly significant projects, our professional relationship enhancing rather than complicating our family bond. I still work hard, perhaps harder than many of my colleagues, but now it's from passion rather than desperation. The habits of discipline and perseverance serve me well in a competitive field where talent alone isn't enough to succeed. If you're watching this and struggling with family dynamics that make you feel unseen or undervalued, know that your worth isn't determined by others' inability to recognize it. Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we're born into. It's the one we find or create along the way. The journey may be longer and harder than it should be, but the life you build on your own terms will be infinitely more satisfying than one handed to you. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming adversity and finding your path. Thank you for listening. And remember, you deserve to be valued, supported, and respected, regardless of what anyone else might have you believe.